Hello, everyone, and welcome. I want to continue talking about Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson, but this time more deeply, more honestly, and more completely. When I say I read this book, I don't mean I just followed the pages from beginning to end. I mean I spent time with it. I argued with it. I paused often. I closed the book many times just to think. This is the kind of biography that doesn't let you stay comfortable. It challenges you not just to admire, but to confront a human being in all his complexity, contradictions, and intensity. What makes this book different from many other biographies is that it does not try to make Steve Jobs likable. It tries to make him understandable, and those two things are not the same. Walter Isaacson had full access to Jobs, to his family, his friends, his enemies, and his colleagues. Jobs even asked Isaacson not to soften anything. He wanted the truth, even when the truth was ugly. He wanted the story to be honest because he believed that truth, no matter how harsh, was a form of respect to life itself. That insistence on honesty sets the tone for the entire book. Nothing is concealed, and nothing is trivialized. As I read more, I realized that Steve Jobs lived his entire life driven by a deep fear of mediocrity. He was terrified of being average. This fear shaped his personality, his leadership style, and his relationships. He demanded excellence not because it was polite or healthy, but because he believed anything less was a kind of betrayal of life itself. That belief explains both his greatness and his cruelty. He did not simply want good products. He wanted products that would feel alive, that would move people, that would change the world. Anything short of that felt like a personal failure, and he held everyone around him to the same impossible standard. One recurring theme in the book is Jobs' obsession with control. He wanted control over products, teams, narratives, and even people's emotions. He believed that if you controlled the experience completely, you could create something truly meaningful. This is why Apple products feel cohesive. Every detail, from the packaging to the user interface, carries intention. But this desire for control came at a human cost. Working with Jobs was often emotionally exhausting. He didn't negotiate gently. He imposed his vision. Colleagues described moments where he could be inspiring one minute and devastatingly critical the next. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting, but it also forced people to push beyond what they thought was possible. Reading about his leadership style made me uncomfortable because it forced me to question common ideas about success. We often hear that strong leaders are kind, empathetic, and supportive. Jobs was sometimes none of those things, yet he built one of the most influential companies in history. The book doesn't excuse his behavior, but it doesn't deny his impact either. It leaves you with a tension that has no simple resolution. How do we reconcile brilliance with brutality? How do we celebrate innovation while acknowledging the pain it caused? These are uncomfortable questions, but Isaacson doesn't let you ignore them. Another powerful part of the book is Jobs' relationship with creativity and intuition. He deeply trusted his instincts. He believed that logic alone could not create great products. He valued intuition, taste, and feeling. This came partly from his experiences with Zen Buddhism. Jobs practiced meditation, explored spirituality, and searched for meaning beyond material success. These experiences shaped how he thought about design and simplicity. The minimalist elegance of Apple products reflects not just a business strategy, but a philosophy of life. Jobs wanted technology to feel human, not mechanical. He wanted people to experience beauty through objects they used every day. However, Jobs often misunderstood spirituality as justification for emotional distance. He believed that being enlightened meant being detached. This led him to hurt people without apology, especially in his personal life. He could be distant, harsh, and unyielding, even with those closest to him. The book shows clearly how this mindset damaged his relationships with women, friends, and even his own children. It is painful to read, but important. It demonstrates that intellectual insight does not automatically produce emotional intelligence. You can understand the world deeply and still fail at human connection. As I went deeper into the book, I became more aware of how Jobs saw reality differently. He had what his colleagues called a reality distortion field. He could convince people that impossible deadlines were possible, that flawed ideas were brilliant, and that exhaustion was a sign of commitment. Sometimes this worked. Teams achieved things they thought were impossible. Other times it led to burnout and resentment. This duality is central to understanding Jobs. His charisma and intensity could inspire miraculous innovation, but it could also erode trust and patience. Inspiration and manipulation often looked almost identical in his presence. One of the most important lessons I took from this is that inspiration and manipulation can look very similar. Jobs inspired people, but he also manipulated them. The difference often depended on the outcome. When things succeeded, people forgave him. When they failed, the emotional cost remained. This is a difficult truth about power. Leadership is rarely just about skill or vision. It is about the human consequences of influence. Jobs teaches us that brilliance cannot be separated from responsibility. The two are bound together, whether we like it or not. The sections about Pixar deserve special attention. Pixar was where Jobs learned humility, if even partially. He was not the creative heart of Pixar. That belongs to people like John Lasseter. He had to learn to step back and support rather than dominate. This experience changed him. It showed him that leadership could be quieter and still effective. Pixar also demonstrated that collaboration could be more powerful than dictatorial control. Jobs' ability to listen, when he chose to, allowed extraordinary creativity to flourish. It was a counterpoint to his behavior at Apple, and it revealed dimensions of his character that were rarely visible in the public eye. When Jobs returned to Apple, he brought all his past experiences with him. The failures, the humiliations, the lessons. He was sharper, more focused, and more strategic. He understood branding, storytelling, and timing better than almost anyone. Apple's comeback was not just technological, it was emotional. Jobs made people feel something about technology. He turned product launches into performances, creating anticipation and excitement that went beyond the device itself. Every presentation was designed to tell a story, to communicate value, and to shape perception. This level of intentionality is rare, and it demonstrates a deep understanding of human psychology and communication. As a reader, I was struck by how intentional Jobs was with narrative. Products launches were performances. Words mattered. Silence mattered. Even what was not said mattered. This teaches an important lesson for communication, especially for English learners. Language is not just about correctness, it is about impact. The way ideas are structured, the tone of speech, and the rhythm of delivery all affect how a message is received. Jobs' mastery of narrative extended to design, business strategy, and personal influence. It reminds us that communication is not only functional, it is emotional and cultural. The book also explores Jobs' relationship with death. Knowing that he was sick changed how he saw time. He became more reflective, though never fully gentle. He thought about legacy not as fame, but as influence. He cared deeply about what would remain after him. This part of the book feels quiet, almost fragile. Jobs' confrontation with mortality gave him clarity, but it also exposed his vulnerabilities. It reminded me that even people who seem invincible are shaped by impermanence. His reflections on life and work offer lessons about priorities, values, and the finite nature of time. One moment that stayed with me was when Jobs talked about building products that would outlive him. He wanted Apple to continue without him, but also